Welcome in, everybody. Michigan State Spartans Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Ryan Elke, and big things to talk about. First off, 15 days away from kickoff. 15. We are so close, but yet seems so far away. But there's been a lot of news. Michigan State, they introduced their new athletic director, Dan Bartholomae from Western Michigan. So kind of break down what he said in his press conference and just more of a little compare and contrast as to maybe some of the other athletic directors over the last few years. So we'll dive into that and kind of the energy Bartholome's trying to set for us fans, and if we're buying in, if we have no excuse but to buy in. That's kind of really what it comes down to. And then there was some breaking news about 20, 30 minutes ago pertaining kind of towards Michigan State. But we have a lot to dive into today. Before we dive in, though, we're here on the Voice of College Football Network. First off, if you're on YouTube, if you just found us, like the video, subscribe, leave comments. Michigan State, the VOCFB. You can follow, the parent channel at the VOCFB. Find us on Facebook, like us there as well. I myself, you can find me on Twitter, X at Ryan EL_key. Follow me on TikTok. It's Postgame Walks. And then Elke, EHLKE, my last name. TikTok, you'll start seeing some videos pop up post games. I'll give quick 2-minute recap of the game, promo the show, and then we'll be doing a post-game show here live after every game. Episodes Tuesdays and Thursdays live at 9 p.m. And I'm excited for the season to start. I'm excited to get some more shows in and have actual football to talk about. And before we dive in to talking Michigan State, do I bring up if Voice of College Football is our company. Right here is their shop. If you're looking to, support the cause, here's what they have. Some nice hats here and some reasonably priced hats here. Look at that. Anywhere from $21 to $30 on a hat. VOCFB. Got some nice quality shirts here. Polo. Again, these don't cost an arm and a leg like you'll see on other websites trying to just shop and support your favorite people. And there is quite a bit. Let's view all here because there's a couple other. This coffee mug, boom, here. Get that green handle right there, $16. Nice sweatshirt. That's going to come in handy when it comes to those later games against Oregon and Washington. You got your can koozie as well, your cooler, and this tumbler as well. Just $25. Very reasonable price there for the shop as well. So we ain't trying to take an arm and a leg from you. We're just trying to support the cause, people. So that's vocfb.com/shop. You can help support us there. But let's dive in. Let's dive in, people. It's Michigan State Spartans Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. The breaking news, I think, is about 20, 30 minutes ago in the basketball world. It's sad to report that Jackson Kohler has committed to BYU. Kohler obviously played the last 4 years, Michigan State, from Utah, so going to stay in the home area. And, as he kind of jumped into the lawsuit to get that extra year for, the 5-5 type of player since the 2022 class missed out. He jumped in on that. There was about a month ago, I think, is when that judge came out and said, like, yes, these guys are eligible. I think there's like another, ruling a couple days ago that they could, that teams could start talking to those players and that whole process can get started. And Jackson Kohler commits to BYU. BYU is top of the list, and understandably, him being from that area, I feel good for the family who, the Kohler family, they flew out to I think it was every game of Jackson's career. The miles they racked up, so they get to save some miles. But Kohler 13 and 8 last year. Spartan dog through and through, and and I think this whole thing happened. Tom Izzo, I think, spoke, said, our roster's our roster's set at the moment. So it didn't look like there was a return for Kohler, possibly. And we still don't even know if these kids are going to be eligible for the season. They're eligible right now, but as we've seen throughout this whole process, they're eligible now. 2 weeks later, they could not be eligible, then eligible again. So I think for the Michigan State sake, I wish they would have tried to bring Kohler in and retain him and keep him and do what it takes. It's just not what happened. It's one of those things that, we all hoped and prayed, but we all also know how Tom Izzo runs his program. So, for Kohler's sake, Kentucky was in on the mix as well. I don't remember. It really just seemed like it was BYU and Kentucky. BYU lands him in the portal. Trey Holloman is out there. I believe his Final Four lists or teams that had contacted him came out. It was from John Rothstein, and it was like Cincinnati, LSU might have been one of them. I know St. John's and like Providence, I think, were the four. Of course, LSU has to contact everybody. And, Holloman did play for Will Wade. Maybe I'm just making up LSU because LSU right now has 4 players on their basketball team. One of them being Divine Ukachukwu. So who knows if LSU will have a basketball team or if their basketball team's going to be all the rest of the players that are involved in this suit. But it's Will Wade. So we don't care if Will Wade succeeds or not because that man's a scumbag, plain and simple. So it's just a bummer to see that if we do end up seeing Jackson Kohler play college basketball in a different uniform next year. I really wish it would have worked out. He's, one of my favorite players I've gotten to cover for the basketball team. His family, a great family. Jeff Kohler, follow him, trading at Trading Addicts is Papa Kohler's follow. But just a good dude. His mother, too. They're really good people. It didn't matter if they knew your name or not. If you came up and talked to them, they gave you the time of day, gave you a smile, and, really embraced the Spartan fans as well. So, it's sad to see a whole family like that go to a different fan base, but we kind of understand what's happening here. So wish nothing but the best for Jackson in his next stop and, if it works out. Excuse me. Sinus is still knocking me out right now, but let's dive into what really big happened this week. And that's Michigan State introduced a new athletic director, Dan Bartholomae. We spent some time on Tuesday talking about just his accolades and, how he got here and, Michigan State's process on hiring him. Because he was at Western for the last 4 years. Before that, he was at Oregon State. Before that, he was at Pitt. But we got to hear from him. And, as Pat Fitzgerald did in his press conferences, and as Dan Bartholomae here, I think they won their press conference. And what does that mean? It really means nothing to win the press conference. It doesn't. We know that. But is it nice? Is it a good step one? Of course it's a great step one. We want to feel a little bit excited when we hear you for the first time. So that's great to hear. So I jotted down some notes. Just, higher energy comes in. Is a dream come true, destination job, saying all the right things. The interesting little tidbit was him telling the story of when he got the Western job. He got a call from Tom Izzo all the way back in 2022, just kind of welcoming him to the state as someone who's, working in the same field in the state of Michigan. And, for Bartholomae, he's like, that meant a lot. He goes, I picked up that phone call. I can't wait to keep picking up every phone call from here on out. So that was an interesting tidbit. And then him talking about meeting Gusowitz for the first time 2 years ago when I think it was, he said, a soccer game when Western was playing up here. So it seemed like Michigan State did a good job of making this connection, you know, when Bartholomew came to the state. Who knows what it meant? Maybe that's what they do for all ADs, but just interesting tidbits there. Um, and one thing that Bartholomew kind of talked about that was interesting was him mentioning just, hey, Michigan State winning championships, green and white confetti, coming through Lansing, celebrating our teams winning, and, having that dream energy of winning big, and talking about how there's good infrastructure in place at Michigan State. Now it needs to be utilized correctly. And, that's the things you want to hear from the athletics director. We need to see it, but also with Bartholomew, like he can back it up a little bit. Even though he came from Western Michigan, he delivered on a national championship under his watch in hockey. Delivered, what was it, 37 conference championships. So for him to say, like, hey, this, like, we're not shying away from this. It was the line he dropped. It's Spartan excellence without expectation. And, it's nice for Bartholomew to set that bar, as we saw Pat Fitzgerald in like that video, I think it was last week, of when training camp opened, and Fitzgerald, putting the expectations on Big Ten championships, college football playoff. Like we all saw the screenshot of what was up on their big screen, like the national championship. And, it's just nice to have these coaches too that are shooting for the stars. Because damn it, why aren't you? It at least makes it sound believable, as opposed to our last football coach who, couldn't sell ice to a man in the desert. Like, it's nice to have this type of energy around Michigan State again, at least around with football coming up, to have this energy, because it has been kind of a lull for, say, the last 3 years going into 2022. There was high expectations for us, and it kind of fell flat early. But for us to be here now, like, it feels a little different. And maybe I'm just, putting off of becoming a begrudging fan and belittling the sport and the school. Maybe I'm trying to buy that one last hope, but as a fan, why wouldn't you? I mean, honestly, I was talking to someone today, like we're feeling a little bit of hope, but it's like, what else are we supposed to feel after the last 4 years? Like, if we want to enjoy the season, how else are we supposed to feel about this team? Like, yes, let's go into the season with maybe a little bit of ignorance, and expecting some fun this season. So it was interesting for Bartholomew to really put it all out on the table and said, this is what we expect. Because Bartholomew, just peeking at my notes, he did mention J-Bat and kind of like said he left this place in a great shape, as opposed to like when I went and watched J-Bat's introductory conference from last year, to where, J-Bat was talking about how it's an excellent time for MSU to get additional resources, to move forward, to require more, to where Bartholomew's like, hey, no, we're set up. We just need to use things more effectively. Part of it is too what Bat set up. I think I said last week, I think J-Bat left us in a decent spot for Bartholomew to come in. And I swear to, I keep saying Bartholomew. I feel like one of those or those study abroad people that studied in Barcelona. It's gonna wreck me. Just keep saying Bartholomew. It will. May I just have to call him Dan? I don't know, but off my tangent now. Bartholomew. I'm spitting it out there, But I think J Bat did leave us in a good spot, with Spartan Ventures, with for Sparta, and with John Palumbo seemingly to stay on to run, that side of the business pretty much. As Bartholomae kind of referred to, he's thanked Palumbo for all the great work he did as interim athletic director. He's like, I can't wait to work with him more. So it seems like he will stay on here at Michigan State and keep working alongside of those ventures of the business side of the athletic department. And so that's seemingly because we didn't know what would happen if he would leave for Kentucky with Jay Back, kind of be that, be his number 2 again over there, or just try to see things through here and kind of keep building that up. So I'm excited to see, where this new AD will take things, because it's everything's all the best here is at disposal here. We're ready to dive all in, and it did seem a different energy than from what Bat had in his press conference just a year ago. But also, J Bat doesn't seem like that rah guy. It just seemed like him and Bat and Smith were kind of like those. They moved at a slower pace, and I just mean that when speaking to the media for J Bat, because it seemed like in his less than a year, as his press conference was early June in 25, and he left around the same time. Bartholomae just 2 weeks ago, and he doesn't start till technically August 31st is his first day. But I'm excited to see where things will be going. And, just see if what we saw at Western Michigan was kind of like what he can do here. If all of a sudden we are moving at a pace we should be at. So I think another thing he said, it was for the NIL type spending. He goes, right now we're middle of the road, in spending. He goes, okay, what's it look like when we move up to that next bracket? And then get into like the top 3 or 4. He goes, and then we have to reevaluate once we get into the top 3 or 4 of how we're using that money. So I think his goal is to get that NIL spending into that top tier of the Big Ten, and then kind of see where it goes. Because once you get into there, how much difference are we really talking? That's getting into like football and more of that sports, because we all know in hockey, Michigan State was by far the biggest spending team in hockey. I believe that was reported just after the season. They were number 1 by a long shot. But for football, we need to keep moving up. And, for Bartholomae to kind of say what we all feel is a Big Ten school, like when you're in the Big Ten, if you're winning the Big Ten, if you're competing for conference championships, means you're going to be in talks to compete for national championships. And that's where, that is the goal here for Michigan State. And for football, I think it's nice to have people in place that are saying these things out loud, to put these types of goals on paper and willing to work to get us there. Because, with Tucker, it was different. It was more about trying to bring in the flash recruits, being the flashiest and all this. But yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head if he was talking about championships and that. As we all remember, we just remember keep chopping. Jonathan Smith, just none of it worked. None of it did. So Pat Fitzgerald's coming in here, and the expectations maybe our fan base are going to put on him, because I know from the outside, no one's blinking twice at Michigan State. You go to any sports radio here in the state, it's For the Michigan State fans are on the radio, it's, you know, show me and I'll believe it. And that's fine. For the non-Michigan State fans on the radio, they're chuckling like, "No, who cares about them?" They just saw one post like it's the worst run athletic department in the whole country. It's like, yes, the worst run athletic department. We just had a basketball coach here for 30 years having great success. But yes, we have a hockey program that's top 5. We have a women's basketball program on the rise. Like we have great programs here. The football teams had 4 rough years coming off of a coaching change during COVID. And as we've seen in college football, like it's no longer the slow grind to rebuild the football program that it was, 10 years ago. I think we can put it at. Like it's no longer the slow grind to rebuild this type of program. And it's also like it can take, that much time to build one up as just to tear it down. So for the non-state fans that are kind of chuckling at maybe our belief or our energy, you know, we've had to hear from every other fan base when they're having a rough year of how they'll bounce back or this didn't go our way. Like we've heard every single excuse for every team around here. But for some reason, when it's Michigan State, it's like, oh, they can never bounce back. But I'm willing to put my eggs in the basket and just believe, because I like Pat Fitzgerald. I like the energy he brings, and I remember saying this many times when he's at Northwestern, wondering how he would do at a school with great resources. And now I get to see it up close and personal with Michigan State and how he's going to do with the resources Michigan State has to offer. Bartholomae, let's see what he's going to do with this program, how he moves, when with the with the resources he has at his disposal. And to see what happens with the NIL and how that picks up. What happens with, the stadium renovations for Spartan Stadium and the Spartan Village. What's that going to look like? As we know, over at Western, they're started the process of building a brand new, I think, the basketball hockey hybrid arena that was privately funded. To see these new projects come along and to see how he works. Because as another impressive thing when he was at Western was not only like the amount of money he raised, but the different ways he did it. He said he improved like the donors by over 100%. Because that's another thing we've talked about here, at least I've talked about in other places, of when it comes to NIL, and this isn't just Michigan State exclusive, it's more of just college sports, of like how many times can you tap a well of a certain donor in this era? Like that's the one thing. Like, yeah, now we're getting the $20 million involved from the campus or from the school that can be paid out. But like, there's only so many people you can tap on the shoulder and just go, money please. Like there's only so much. So to increase that donor base, and I'm excited too to see what these new stadium renovations could be. I think it was MSU with the propaganda on Twitter. I don't know if you give him if you follow him on Twitter, but the idea of inside Spartan Stadium, like the inside wall of the field, is just, hey, pave that with bricks, get rid of that concrete look, sell bricks for $100 to fans. Like how much of your cost would you offset just doing something like that? Do $100 a brick. Like How many of you would be paying up quick to have your name on the inside wall at Spartan Stadium? I would. I'm pretty sure every season ticket holder would. Pretty sure a lot of alums would, a lot of just different fans, the athletes' parents. Like, I'm sure they would dive right in for that. So I hope that's also. I know that's just a fun Twitter thing to think about, but hell, why not? Let's get creative. Because that's what you have to do now in college athletics. You have to really think outside of the box even more so. It's no longer just nudging a car dealership and saying, "Hey, can you help me out?" Because now we're talking real money, not, "Hey, can we get you know 5 figures to get this kid?" We're talking 6 or 7 figures now to get kids on campus, which is ridiculous. Like, we can all hate this idea of how college sports is moving, but if you don't join in, you're also going to lose out. Like, I know Izzo doesn't talk about the NIL much, but he has people in place that takes care of that. Like, we're a really good spender in basketball. May not seem in the transfer portal. It's because Izzo uses that money for the people that are here from the beginning and that stay. Like, you think Jeremy Fears is not making a pretty penny right now? Cohen Carr's not making a pretty penny. Like, so I'm excited to see this new direction for Michigan State athletics, because it has been, what is it, 10 athletic directors since like 2008 or something, it feels like. That may be wrong. I didn't fact check that thrown out, but it's been a lot of them. It's been a higher turnover. We haven't had a stable one since Mark Hollis left. In the way he left, Alan Haller comes in, and Haller was a nice man, a great guy. I think would probably be a good AD for he was a good athletic director, but just in the wrong decade. You place him in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. I think, like, the way he had things running, I think he was doing fine. He did an okay job, but to take us into the step of what college athletics is now, he wasn't the right person. Jay Back kind of swoops in, kind of. It almost seemed like it was like a consulting job for him. He came in like, "Here's your starter kit of how to get into modern college athletics," and he left. And here comes Bartholomae in with that starter kit, and he's like, "Hey, I have experience doing this. Let's get ready to roll." So I'm excited to see where we go from here. I'm fully buying in. I'm fully getting excited. You may not have to, but I will. Because also, a lot of the other teams in the state don't give us a lot to be excited about the way they move. And I'm hoping Michigan State, with the moves they've made, they're ready to play ball. Because I'm tired of teams trying to, teams I root for, trying to nickel and dime their way into winning things. For once, let's throw the money clip on the table, put the wallet on the table, and say, we're here to play. We're going to play with the big boys, and we're gonna try to win the whole damn thing. That's what I hope the direction that Bartholomae is going to take Michigan State, is that we're not screwing around anymore. So, because I think he knows what state fan bases are in for college athletics. Because now it's at the point where if you're not, there's no such thing as like a nice season anymore if you're not in the playoff. You could say that when there was the 4-team playoff. You could still have a nice season, I hope, before the playoff, where it's just BCS, like get into a BCS bowl, like playing in the Rose Bowl still had juice, still meant something. Like, you could still sell that. If you don't make the playoff, it's hard to sell that things are going good for your football program. So, but we are 15 days away from seeing how this new chapter in Michigan State athletics, Michigan State football will pan out. So we'll get ready. We are 2 weeks away. So next week we'll have shows Tuesday, Thursday. The following week, that'll be game week. So it'll be Tuesday, Thursday, and then late Friday night, early Saturday morning post-game show. So thank you guys for tagging along today. As now we have settled the dust on the off-season garbage of Michigan State. We got through the president, we got through the athletic director, we have the coach in place. We're ready to go now. We're ready to talk football. So we'll come back next week. We'll dive more into the football schedule, what the lines look like for Michigan State, the betting lines on FanDuel. We'll look at what those look like in what games Michigan State can pull an upset, because spoiler alert, they're only a favorite in 2 games this year. You can guess which 2. It's the first 2. So we'll look at the lines. Maybe they've moved, maybe they haven't, but I know there's some close ones, but we'll dive into that and kind of see where Michigan State go from there. But for everyone that watched tonight, I want to thank you. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Ryan EL_Key. Follow the show on YouTube, Michigan State, on the VOCFB. Well, thank you all for watching. Please subscribe. Please like this video. And we will see you Tuesday, 9 o'clock for another show. And go green.